Okay, ladies and gentlemen. We're back down to $2, but I have to say, Hal, this is a very important question.
Yes,
it's a question, actually, in a way, if you look at it in kind of a way that probably you wouldn't normally look at it, that could decide the future of our planet.
Well, I knew I would have to decide that sooner or later. So
$2,
lay it
ladies
on
and
me.
gentlemen, $2. Now, are you ready?
Yeah.
Are you ready? Can I have some, like, music here for, like, can I build some tension?
Oh, that music is...
You're right on it, K-Rob. Thank you.
You barely need to ask for it, and it is there.
Okay, ready?
That's our high standard of service.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Hal will now answer the ultimate question. No, this is just, I'm hyping this up for no reason, because it suits me. Ladies and gentlemen, an unsigned question, but very important nonetheless. Paper or plastic?
Well, this comes down to a moral choice, but also an aesthetic choice. Perhaps we are wrong to separate these two arenas in our consideration of how we act in our daily life. We may think that what we prefer as a matter of artistic or aesthetic choice is a simple frippery compared to our honest, sober duty. But that thought is in itself a decaying vestige of a harsh and repressive Puritan shadow which has fallen across our country ever since those grim-faced Protestants first strode in their buckled shoes across the stony soil of New England back in the 17th century. Now remind me again what this question is about.
Paper
or
plastic?
Yeah, oh, okay. So the deal is, for me, paper, because paper feels better to touch. Paper is nice. And paper also goes away after a while. And when it does, it leaves no icky stain on or in the earth. Paper is not made of petro byproducts, which plastic is. Plastic seems to be non-biodegradable. And it will exist unto the end of time as fossil blobs in the rocks of the future. Or will it? Because plastic itself has been around for so short a time geologically, one does not know that perhaps at some future date its molecular state will suddenly undergo a phase shift or change and just into a puddle of goop. Into a puddle of petro byproducts. But even so, it will leave a stenchy stink puddle on the earth of oil and petroleum, which represents everything anal, banal, and dead, which should have been buried, the results of the death of millions of organisms, but is brought up and squirted into the air by our destructive mechanical processes. Yay. But you may say, well, but if you're using paper, what about the trees, man? You're cutting down the trees, you're killing the planet. Yeah. I'm not doing anything. I'm just answering the question. And I'm going to say that we don't need to cut down ancient trees to make toothpicks or mow down forests to make paper. I have an answer which will please one person in this audience very much, as I know by an occult power I have. And here it comes. Hemp is the answer. Get rid of this dull-witted opposition to marijuana, which started as a racist and fascist thing. If you actually know the history, which is interesting, why marijuana was illegal in the first place, it wasn't for good reasons. But once we get hemp into operation, which we can't have now, it makes great paper, and it comes out of weeds, not trees, and it does other things too. It makes cloth, it makes fiber.
George Washington grew hemp.
George Washington grew hemp. Jefferson grew hemp. And moreover, we know for sure that they smoked it, because Jefferson, in a letter to Washington, wrote that he wanted him to enjoy some bang that he had acquired. Bang in this letter is spelled B-A-N-G, not B-H-A-N-G. But in the 18th century, spelling was a sort of creative enterprise. It wasn't until Dr. Johnson created the first dictionary that really began to be standardized. At any rate, there you go. Hemp for victory. Don't use plastic if you can afford it.
Someone who has no name asks, what else can you get for $1 in this economy?
Yeah.
Not too much, not too much. But if you turn it into quarters, you can get 2 homey figurines. Each one is different, and they represent the ethos of our time. A large collection will make you feel less lonely when placed on your knick-knack and curio shelf at home.
That's not a homey figurine.
No, that is an image, however, an imago. The homey figurines come in standing shapes, sitting shapes. Some of them ride motorcycles or play musical instruments. Some represent police, others represent criminals. It's all jolly fun, and I particularly try to collect the females, which are harder to find, for reasons of my own. A Welsh Incident by Robert Graves. But that was nothing to the things that came out from the sea caves of Criccairth yonder. What were they? Mermaids? Dragons? Ghosts? Nothing at all of any things like that. What were they then? All sorts of queer things. Things never seen nor heard nor written about. Very strange, un-Welsh, utterly peculiar things. Oh, solid enough they seemed to the touch, had anyone dared it. Marvelous creation, all shapes and sizes, and no sizes. All new, each one perfectly unlike his neighbor, though all came moving slowly out together. Describe just one of them. I am unable. What were their colors? Mostly nameless colors. Colors you'd like to see. But one was puce, or perhaps more like crimson, though not purplish. Some had no color. Tell me, had they legs? Not a leg nor a foot amongst them that I saw. But did these things come out in any order? What o'clock was it? What was the day of the week? Who else was present? How was the weather? I was coming to that. It was 3:30 on Easter Tuesday last. The sun was shining. The Harlech Silver Band played Machog Yesi on 37 shimmering instruments, collecting for Carnarvon's Fever Hospital Fund. The populations of Potherlee, Criccairth, Borth, Maddock, Porth, Maddock, Boinrin, and Raith were all assembled. Criccairth's mayor addressed them first in good Welsh, and then in fluent English, twisting his fingers in his chain of office, welcoming the things. They came out on the sand, not keeping time to the band, moving slowly seaward at a snail's pace, till at last the most odd, unaccountable thing of all, which scarce one man there could see for wonder, did something, recognizably a something. Well, what? It made a noise. A frightening noise? No, no, no. A musical noise? A sound of scuffling? No, but a very loud, respectable noise, like groaning to oneself in chapel just before the second psalm. What did the mayor do? I was coming to that. All right, I wonder if...
Dr. Howe, ladies and gentlemen.
Here we go. Lights down, please. Yes, Chilonians, they are aboard their craft, but we seem to be stopped in the middle of their saga. They're, oh, here we go. There we go. Yes, they're visiting our Earth for purposes unknown. But there you have it.
Okay.
Oh, good.
Everything is hush hush.
Yeah, but
Hush hush.
I can see the arrow-shaped ship through the inky blackness of space.
it is pretty inky and black and oh yeah, it is. Yes, you know.
Hush hush. Everything is hush hush.
our sad fate here. We are creatures of time. Oh, they're going back now. They seem to have accomplished their objective. Oh, here they are.
Yay!
Well, perhaps we'll bring it back next week. Perhaps it will. You know, this is simply the luck of the draw. I'm sorry, folks. We had it all prepared. K-Rob labored in his atelier to bring you this movie. But it will not go to waste. It will come back. In fact, I will now extravagantly promise you that the movie next week will be of extraordinary length, power, potency, and passion, and describe the entire creation of this planet and millions of years of evolution upon its surface. Narrated, of course, by me, and we'll also throw in the Chilonians. So, sorry about tonight, but these things can't be helped. It's too much to go through the small and humble filter of our apparatus. I do hope no one is as distressed as I am. So let us continue.
It's not likely, Hal, that anyone's as distressed as you.